Hello, everyone. I'm joined today with my cat Bob, who just decided now is a good time to clean. So I guess I will just be talking about biomes right now, which is what we're talking about next. So you probably are familiar with biomes, and especially images like this, where it shows you to scale how big a biome is versus an ecosystem, a community, a population, and so on. But let's go into what you know. So we know this is a food web. A food chain would just show probably a single line, so like grass, grain, fruits, elk to wolf. But a food web encompasses all these different various organisms and how they interact with each other in the same habitat, which is a community. Oh, let me try and get my laser here. So a community, that's essentially what every food web is showing. Organisms interact with each other. Now, the video you watched yesterday on the how wolves change rivers, that is referring to an ecosystem because it's a community of organisms like animals and plants interacting with each other and their physical environment, the water, right? A biome is just a larger region that's characterized by a specific type of climate, those physical factors again, and the organisms that live there. So we are going to be talking about Yellowstone. You watched a video yesterday about how wolves change rivers. So we're going to look into where the heck Yellowstone actually is. So I'm using Google Earth Pro, which is free and really cool, easy to download. And you can travel all around the world, but for right now, we're going to actually zoom in on Yellowstone. So right here, we are kind of kitty corner from the cities and Mille Lacs Lake. So typically right here, there we are. And we're going to take a field trip to Wyoming. Very exotic. So we're going to go through the Dakotas. Oh, here we are. So you can see there's a lot going on here. Some really cool features out west here. A lot of times people just think of like, oh, it's so boring to drive through, there's nothing going on. But there are some really unique geological features that make these ecosystems very cool. So let's go into Yellowstone Park here. And I think, yeah, I have a little thumbtack. So this kind of looks like snow. When we zoom in a little closer, it also has these like burnt orange and bright blue pools. So Yellowstone is super unique because it actually has some crazy volcanic activity, and the water right here is heated up by magma underneath the ground. And so they call that a hot spring. So to get a better view, let's go to the street where we will see it. No, okay. So you can see that steam from the hot spring. So cool. Other than that, you can see, it has all these pine trees that we recognize, and we have that in Minnesota too. We probably don't have those big mountains, but some things look familiar. So this ecosystem is very unique in that it has a lot of those physical factors that may or may not be influenced by its living organisms, like the wolves did when they changed the rivers. So why do we need to learn about biomes? Why can't we just learn about ecosystems like the Yellowstone ecosystem? Why do we need to make a bigger category that it has to fit into? And really, you can learn about ecosystems and just be happy with that. But what's really cool about biomes is that it kind of connects us to the rest of the world. So although Yellowstone has some unique factors, it also has some similarities to other ecosystems around the world. And that's why, that's why it's cool to learn about biomes, is so you can kind of make some connections with all these other continents and countries. And then it helps scientists too see those similarities and differences. And especially now when we have a lot of habitat destruction, a lot of people, when it's like Earth Day especially, and everyone says, oh, let's plant trees. Well, not every biome needs to have or can even support trees. We'll learn about those biomes a little bit later. So I think I have a Closer picture, yeah. So this is a hot spring, and maybe you've been there. They're closed now, unfortunately. I've never been there. My husband's been there, but you can actually get really close to all these cool geological uh, uh, factors like hot springs and geysers and things like that. Just things that you don't see here in the Midwest, that's for sure. So when we're looking at food chains and food webs, we are talking about the living organisms like wolves, elk, and how they interact with each other. That's their community. When we talk about how the wolves influenced the behavior of rivers, we're talking about an ecosystem. So, what are we talking about when we're talking about biomes? Well, we are identifying 9 biomes, and these biomes contain ecosystems with similarities no matter where they are in the world. And there's some factors that will influence that we'll get into. But it's really important that you take a look at these 9 biomes and read the names. If you just Google a different image, and I'll include this image in the folder, if you look up a different image and just Google biomes, there's a lot of different interpretations, different findings on what people label as biomes. Sometimes as many as up to 20 biomes are listed around the world. Now, because we are in such a weird situation with e-learning, shortened amount of time. Unfortunately, we're not in person to learn about this. We're going to simplify it to just these 9 biomes for around the world. Just know that in Minnesota here, they call it a temperate forest. We will get more specific into what biomes Minnesota has, because that's kind of important. You know, you live here. We'll know a little bit more about that. So, I'd like to make an analogy of biomes and ecosystems with music. So going back to when I asked you guys what song you were listening to, some of you had a specific song, some of you just had an artist, and some of you had just a genre, like country or pop or rap. And that's kind of like what we're doing when we're categorizing the different environments of the world. So we have these broad terms, kind of like our biomes. So we have a lot of different types of rock, and then we have rap too. So let's dig a little deeper. So if you're really interested and you've listened to a lot of rap, you're going to know that there's different categories of rap. And those categories are differentiated by the way they sound or what kind of musicians are involved in that type of or that specific part of the genre. Which is kind of cool too that you can see all the lines that go into different music types. And they're trying to show you how all this music is influenced by each other, which is just cool. It's kind of like a food web, but they don't eat each other. They're just impacting each other. So all these specific types of rap are kind of like ecosystems. There's a lot going on in that just one specific type. Um, let's go to this one. You can learn a little bit more about it. And you see playlists. You have all these different musicians that make up what this subgenre is, and then how they relate with these other genres in the broader spectrum or the broader genre rap. So if you want to think of it that way and use that analogy to look back at our biomes, feel free. If that wasn't helpful, then I'm sorry. Analogies help me learn a little easier. But these ecosystems have similarities with other ecosystems around the world, such that when we talk about biomes, that's what we're talking about. Where in the other side of the world do we see this same environment? So, especially if you are living in an area where you refer to, you know, picture, let me get this circle here. Like I call this a forest, you may call this a forest, and certainly these are also types of forests, but they look different. So that's the goal, is that you can put labels on these so that when you're communicating with someone, they know what you're talking about. So forest doesn't cut it. They contain different organisms such that they're more specific than just forest. So what makes biomes different then? Well, going back when we looked at the definition of what makes up a biome, it's a specific climate and all the organisms that live there. So when we talk about climate, we talk about temperature, how cold, how warm, and weather conditions, specifically the amount of rain, precipitation that's in that area, humidity. Those are all really big factors when you think about the climate. And then we look at the organisms that are adapted to live in those biomes. So again, we are using this biomap and this biomap only. There are a ton of different ones on Google that will confuse you and lead you to the wrong answer when it comes to our questions. So please, I will attach the picture on the folder. Just use this one. It makes it simple for everyone. So that is it. I wanted to keep it pretty simple for the introduction. I know you guys are pretty familiar with a lot of this stuff already. There is a reading that goes along with this to help you answer the questions that I have for you today. And then we will look at Minnesota biomes on Thursday and Friday. All right, guys. Thank you. And I hope we see some of you tomorrow for our open Google Meet. Bye.